Welcome back to the Credible Dev YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk to you about my favorite Mac apps so far, the ones I get the most use out of. In my previous video, I talked about switching from Linux to Mac, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to create a video about some of the apps that I've used a lot since switching over. A lot of these apps you may already be familiar with if you've been on a Mac before, but maybe you're not familiar with them. Maybe you're considering hopping over to Mac and you're curious about applications. This video is for you. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, the first application is actually not as useful as it was a few weeks ago. For a long time, Mac didn't have the ability really built in to snap windows like you would in other operating systems, other desktop environments, where you could snap a window to the left or to the top or make it full screen or whatever. This first application is called Magnet. This one comes at a cost of $5, but there are free alternatives. Rectangle, and now, if you've updated to the latest version of macOS, Sequoia, then this is built in natively. So you don't really need this anymore. But I still like it. I still use it. Obviously, I paid $5 for it. My wife has the free version of Rectangle on her device, and they work pretty similarly. But I liked the shortcuts that were just out of the box available for Magnet a little bit better, so I went with it. Also, just wanted to try something different, and I didn't know at the time, hadn't done some research to know that Sequoia was bringing this. So, lost $5 maybe I didn't have to spend, but that's all right. So, I can use keyboard shortcuts to bounce the window around and bring it back full screen, things like that. Pretty basic. Runs up here in the menu bar. If we bring this down, you can see those shortcuts here. And yeah, it's a pretty basic app, but it helps out a lot. Right. Our next app is Raycast. Now, when I'd been on the Mac in the past, I'd used an app called Alfred, which is very similar to Spotlight. This is Spotlight. You can pull up an app like this. You can do different things. You can ask it to do conversions for you. So, if we want to know how fast 10 miles per hour was in kilometers per hour, you can do those kinds of things here. Pretty basic, but nice to have. Alfred did similar things. It made it quicker for you to get to apps, so you didn't have to go to the launcher to find them. But with Raycast, I feel like it's Alfred on steroids. It's things that I wish Alfred had. Raycast is free. Alfred is free. There is paid versions of Raycast. I'll go over here to their website so you can see a little more about it. You can install it through Homebrew, which we'll talk about later. You can also just download it straight from their website. But it has quite a few nice features to it. The only ones that I really use are the application shortcuts. So not only, can I bring up Raycast, this is Raycast here, and I could start typing Proton, for example, and then I get these apps here and I could launch them from here. But one thing that it does that Alfred didn't do, from my recollection, anyways, is I could just have a shortcut. So let's see, like Spotify. Instead of having to look for Spotify, I can create a shortcut that brings up Spotify, and it brought it up in another on another monitor. But here you can see Spotify, and if I minimize it, one thing that really annoyed me about Mac was if you do the tabbed, just to go to another app and you go back to Spotify, where you minimize it, it doesn't bring the window back up. But with these shortcuts, I can just use the shortcut and it brings the window back up. So I rarely ever use the command tab menu. I know you can't see it on the screen when I'm pressing it, but I'm pressing the command tab. So Raycast adds a lot of things that Alfred didn't have, and features that I was looking for in Mac to make living within the Mac a little bit easier. Things I was used to from Windows or from Linux, from like KDE specifically. Gives me some of those abilities here. And yeah. So another thing that it does is clipboard history. And there is a pro version of this, which gives you a lot more. Trying to find where they They had a listing. Maybe it's on this pricing page. Yeah, here we go. So the free, which is what I have, has 3 months worth of clipboard history. That's plenty enough for me. There might be a use case to have a longer clipboard history, but I don't really need that, to be honest. You can do custom extensions. I haven't really messed with that. Really, the only thing that I've done is quick launching apps and then searching for apps is all I really use it for. Does that job perfectly fine on the free version. So the next app that I'd like to talk about is Better Display. So when I came to the Mac, typically when I'm in here in my office, I will connect a dongle that has a bunch of different ports on it because you only have a few ports on the MacBook Air. So I had a dongle for my last PC, and it works fine with it. It's a USB-C, but one of them is an external monitor, HDMI port. So I have an external monitor connected, and the scaling on that external monitor was kind of weird. And you didn't have a lot of flexibility with it in the native Mac settings. So Better Display actually gives you a ton of options for a separate display. And you can see it running up here in the menu bar as well. You have quite a few different options, refresh rate, a lot of different customizations. But for me, it was really just the resolution. Like I wanted to be able to modify the resolution to make it, different on the built-in MacBook Air display versus this external display that I was connecting. This is a free app. You can install it through Homebrew as well. You can also just download it straight from here on their GitHub. Everything I'm talking about will be linked down in the description so you don't have to go look it up or anything. But this was an excellent app. Glad it's free. Even if it costs a couple of bucks, I would definitely pay for it because it's served its purpose very well for me. The next app that I was going to talk about is called Caffeine, and it's this little coffee cup right up here. And when you click that, it's going to make sure that your displays don't go to sleep. Your screens stay alive. Sometimes working here and you're working on something else. If you don't have like a YouTube video up or something like that to keep the screen alive, the screen's going to go to sleep. It can be a bit annoying sometimes, and I wouldn't want to go adjust the settings every time. So it's much easier to use Caffeine and just click this little button off and on whenever I want to make sure that the display stays alive. Also, another free app. It'll be linked down in the description as well. The next thing that I want to talk about is iTerm. So the built-in terminal, if we pull that up, this is the built-in terminal, which I started to do some customizations on, but then I discovered iTerm 2, and actually thanks to this video here, I'll have his video linked down below. This is a great video. If you're looking to customize the terminal on your Mac, specifically with iTerm 2, then this is a great video to watch. He walks you through his customization, but he does it in a step-by-step way that's very easy to follow. This is what I use to set up my iTerm 2. So let me go back over here. You can get iTerm 2 here, downloading it here, or through Homebrew. There's a lot of things you can do with it with themes and colors and just all sorts of stuff. So let's go ahead and bring up my iTerm 2 window. And this is what my configuration of iTerm 2 looks like. Yours will likely look much different than mine. Mine was very basic. I didn't go too in depth or too far off even from what he showed in the video. I just wanted to get something a little nicer than the built-in terminal. Just like in Linux and Mac, you can spend a lot of time in the terminal, so having one that's visually appealing and functional for you and your workflow is important. So iTerm 2 can help you get there. And next, I'd like to talk about Obsidian. You may be familiar with Obsidian. Let's see if I have it pulled up already. Bring it over to the screen. Derp, derp. All right. So Obsidian, I use it's a markdown editor for notes. It can do lots of crazy things. There's tons of videos about customizing Obsidian, but Obsidian is my preferred note-taking application. I use it a lot for school notes and other things like that. You can get really fancy with it, with the way that you organize them, which I started to do here and haven't really kept up with. That's a topic for a different day, but overall, it makes taking notes, if you're used to markdown language, then you would be able to pick this up right away. Very similar to other editors that use Markdown. This is available cross-platform, so even if you don't have Mac, you can use this app on Windows, Linux, whatever. And then not Obsidian, Homebrew. That's what I was talking about, where I was installing a lot of these applications was via Homebrew, and it's really like they say, the missing package manager for Mac OS. And it's just like APT and Pac-Man and things like that you might be used to from Linux. Homebrew is very similar. It's an easy way to get started with installing applications. And they even have this page here where you can look up some of those, but generally I haven't had to use this, but it might be nice to use. I'll have all this linked down below as well. But if you're on a Mac, you definitely want to have Homebrew. Other things that aren't necessarily Mac specific that I do use on a daily basis are VS Code, a lot of the JavaScript, or my blog that I use Hugo for. It's all set up in VS Code. I use a lot of JetBrains tools like PyCharm and IntelliJ IDEA for Java, and Docker Desktop, obviously, for Dockerizing things and managing Docker containers. That was something I started with at school. I'd never really used Docker in that kind of way before, but with school, we had a project where we had a Java application that we had to put into a Docker container, which got me exposed to Docker Desktop. Postman for API testing and management. That's something I used for like CertRanker when I was setting up the APIs for it. I have switched away from Edge. As many of you know that maybe watched my channel for a long time, I was using Edge as my browser. It was just easy for me. At work, we use Edge. I used Windows a lot. Edge was the default on there. I had a lot invested into Edge because all my shortcuts were in there, and good or bad, I was allowing it to save passwords for a period of time, which I've actually stopped doing since I moved to Mac and started using the Brave browser. I no longer allow the browser to save the passwords. I let all that be managed in ProtonPass, which is another change from before, where I was using Bitwarden solely before for password management. I've transitioned over to ProtonPass, and part of that is because I was already paying for a higher Proton package that included the VPN and mail. I have some custom domains that are hosted with Proton Mail. They started offering ProtonPass, and I ignored it for a while, but once I switched over to the Mac, I decided, hey, let's go ahead and get everything into ProtonPass, and so far it's been a great experience. There's actually a couple of things from ProtonPass that I never saw with Bitwarden. I don't know if Bitwarden didn't do this or if I just didn't have it set up properly, but for instance, you log into a website and you have to enter your code, and you might have that OTP code stored or set up in Bitwarden. You'd have to, open up Bitwarden, get the code, and put it in the website. With ProtonPass, if it recognizes the website, it will pop up and give you the code and just offer you a button to copy the code and put it in for you. So it just saves you a little bit of extra work, which is very nice. Other than those, Microsoft Office apps, of course, with school, a lot of things are done in Microsoft Office. My work life, a lot of things are done in Microsoft Office apps. I have a personal account with Microsoft where I have a 1 terabyte OneDrive. A lot of things I have in my TrueNAS are backed up there as well. So, things that go to my TrueNAS first, but then ultimately they end up getting backed up to that OneDrive as additional security to make sure that that data doesn't accidentally get deleted or go missing or anything like that. I know a lot of people probably have, issues with it on OneDrive and the privacy of it and what's Microsoft doing with it. For me and the stuff that I have on there, I'm not overly concerned about that. And lastly, Currently, OBS and DaVinci Resolve is what I'm using for recording these videos on Mac. That may change in the future. This is kind of what I started out with, and I actually had no experience with DaVinci Resolve. And so far, I had to look up how to do a few things, but it's not too difficult. I'd always heard that DaVinci Resolve was very difficult, had a high learning curve. But so far, it hasn't been too bad. But also, I don't do a lot of complicated editing. I mean, I'm just recording my screen, and occasionally I might obscure something on the screen, some text or something that might be private information that I don't want in the video. But other than that, I mean, my recordings and things are very simple. So that's really it for the apps that I'm using so far. I'm still new to the Mac. It's only maybe a month and a half in. So a lot to learn, a lot to experience. If you have some experience with Mac and you have some apps that you like, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what those are. I'll definitely check them out. That's all I got for you today. Hope everybody has a great weekend. See you next time.